You think I'm trash, huh? She spat, the words barely audible above the gala music. Sophia, reeking of privilege and expensive gin, sneered. Then came the shove. Marble met bone. Pain exploded. Silence. They all saw it. The hotel maid sprawled at the foot of the grand staircase. Another mess for someone else to clean. Fired, done. But here's the thing. Those bejeweled vultures missed one crucial detail. A secret. A twist of fate about to detonate in their faces. He saw it, though. His eyes narrowed. A low growl rumbled in his chest. They have no idea she's his wife. What happens when a billionaire's secret is exposed in the most dramatic way possible? Stay with me, because this story will leave you speechless. And if you love stories about hidden identities and unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. My name is Evelyn, and for 2 years I was nothing more than a ghost in a white uniform at the Grand Sterling Hotel. Every morning I'd wake up at 5, put on that crisp uniform, and disappear into the background of other people's glamorous lives. I cleaned their rooms, served their drinks, and listened to their conversations as if I wasn't even there. And honestly, most days it felt like I wasn't. The Grand Sterling wasn't just any hotel. It was where the city's elite came to see and be seen, where million-dollar deals were made over champagne, and where people like me existed only to make their lives more comfortable. I'd learned to move silently through marble hallways, to keep my eyes down when wealthy guests passed by, and to never ever speak unless spoken to first. But I had my reasons for staying in that world that seemed determined to ignore me. My mother was sick, really sick, and the medical bills were piling up faster than I could pay them. The Sterling paid well enough to keep us afloat, barely, but it wasn't enough for the surgery she desperately needed. Every night I'd count the money I'd saved, knowing it would take years to reach the amount we needed, and wondering if we had that kind of time. That's how I ended up married to Harrison Stone, though nobody knew it. Not my co-workers, not the hotel guests, not even the man himself seemed to remember most days. 6 months ago, I'd been cleaning the penthouse suite when I overheard him on a phone call with his lawyer. His grandfather's will required him to be married by his 30th birthday to inherit the family fortune, and his birthday was just weeks away. He was desperate, and honestly, so was I. The conversation that followed was the strangest of my life. I'd offered him a solution, and he'd offered me one in return. A marriage on paper, nothing more. He'd get his inheritance. I'd get enough money for my mother's surgery, and in 1 year we'd quietly divorce and go our separate ways. It was purely business, he'd assured me, and I'd believed him. The wedding was quick and private. Just us, a judge, and 2 witnesses pulled from the courthouse hallway. Harrison had been kind but distant, treating the whole thing like a business meeting. He'd transferred the money for my mother's surgery that same day, and then he'd left for an overseas business trip that had lasted months. We'd barely spoken since. The night of the charity gala, I was assigned to work the event like always. The hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into something magical, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over silk tablecloths and arrangements of white roses. The city's most powerful people would be there writing checks for causes they'd forget about by morning, but looking beautiful while they did it. I was in the staff preparation area, checking that my uniform was spotless when Mrs. Sterling, the hotel manager, gave us our final instructions. She was a thin woman with sharp eyes who had never once called me by my name in 2 years, referring to me only as you or the girl. Tonight would be no different. Remember, she said, scanning the line of servers and cleaners, you are invisible tonight. These guests are here to see each other, not you. Move quietly, work efficiently, and do not engage in conversation unless absolutely necessary. The evening started like any other high society event I'd worked. I moved through the crowd with trays of champagne, collecting empty glasses, wiping down surfaces that were already spotless. The guests talked around me and through me, discussing stock prices and vacation homes as if I were a piece of furniture. That's when I first saw her that evening. Sophia Blackwell, daughter of one of the hotel's board members, made her entrance like she was walking a red carpet. She wore a shimmering silver dress that probably cost more than I made in a year, and she moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. I knew Sophia by reputation. She was 25, beautiful in that expensive way that only money can buy, and absolutely convinced that the world existed for her entertainment. The hotel staff had learned to be extra careful around her because she had a talent for finding fault with everything and making sure someone paid for it. Within minutes of her arrival, I could feel her eyes on me. I was refilling water glasses at a table near the dance floor when she approached, her silver heels clicking against the marble with purpose. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone rich people use when they're about to make your day worse. "You just spilled water on my shoe." I looked down. Her shoes were completely dry. "I'm sorry, miss, but I don't think, are you calling me a liar?" Her voice rose just enough that people at nearby tables started to turn and look. "My family owns part of this hotel, and I won't be contradicted by the help." My face burned with embarrassment, but I kept my voice steady. "Of course not, miss. Let me get something to clean that for you." But as I bent down with a napkin, she stepped back and somehow managed to knock into a passing waiter carrying a tray of red wine. The glasses crashed to the floor, sending wine splashing across the white marble and coincidentally all over my uniform. The sound of breaking glass brought more attention our way. Sophia gasped dramatically, pressing her hand to her chest. "Oh my goodness, look what you've done. You've ruined everything." Mrs. Sterling appeared at my side within seconds, her face tight with anger. "What happened here?" "This clumsy girl ran right into me," Sophia said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "She spilled wine everywhere and nearly knocked me over. I wanted to defend myself, to explain what had really happened, but I knew it wouldn't matter. My word against a board member's daughter. There was no contest, so I stood there, wine dripping from my uniform, and apologized for something I hadn't done. "Clean this up immediately," Mrs. Sterling hissed at me, "and change your uniform. You look like a mess." As I knelt to collect the broken glass, I heard the whispers starting around me. How careless. They should screen these people better. Poor Sophia, having to deal with such incompetence. But then I heard a different voice, deeper and more familiar than I wanted to acknowledge. "Is everything all right here?" I looked up and there he was, Harrison Stone, my husband who barely knew me, looking down at the scene with those intense gray eyes that had somehow haunted my thoughts for months. He was wearing a black suit that fit him like it had been designed specifically for his tall frame. And when he entered the conversation, the entire atmosphere shifted. The whispers stopped. Sophia immediately brightened, smoothing her dress and arranging her features into her most charming smile. Even Mrs. Sterling seemed to stand a little straighter. "Mr. Stone," Sophia practically purred. "How wonderful to see you. I was just dealing with a small accident. Nothing that can't be handled." Harrison's eyes met mine for just a moment, and I saw something flicker there before he looked away. We'd agreed to keep our distance at public events, to maintain the illusion that we were strangers. But having him so close while I knelt on the floor, cleaning up a mess that wasn't my fault, made something ache in my chest that I didn't want to examine too closely. "I see," he said simply, and then he moved on to greet other guests, leaving me to finish cleaning up while Sophia watched with satisfaction. The rest of the evening felt like walking through a minefield. Every time I turned around, Sophia was there, ready with another accident or complaint. She knocked over a flower arrangement and blamed me for placing it too close to the edge of the table. She claimed I'd been rude when she'd asked for a special cocktail that wasn't on the menu. She even suggested to Mrs. Sterling that perhaps the hotel's standards for staff had slipped recently. With each incident, more people began to notice and whisper. I felt like I was drowning in their judgment, in their assumption that I was incompetent, careless, somehow less than human. And through it all, Harrison remained in my peripheral vision, charming other guests, making business connections, being the perfect billionaire bachelor that the world expected him to be. The breaking point came near the end of the evening. Most of the guests had moved to the dance floor or gathered in small groups around the room's edges. I was clearing champagne glasses from a table near the grand marble staircase that led to the hotel's mezzanine level when Sophia appeared beside me again. "Having trouble keeping up tonight?" she asked, her voice sweet but her eyes cold. "Maybe this job is too challenging for someone like you." "I'm managing just fine, thank you," I replied, continuing to stack glasses carefully on my tray. "Are you?" She stepped closer, and I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sharp scent of the alcohol she'd been drinking all evening. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're struggling. Maybe you should consider finding work more suited to your capabilities. I straightened up, meeting her gaze directly for the first time all evening. What exactly are you trying to say? I'm saying that some people know their place in the world, and others need to be reminded of it. The contempt in her voice was so clear, so absolute that something inside me finally snapped. My place? Your place? She repeated, stepping even closer, cleaning up after people who matter, staying invisible, not getting ideas above your station. And what station is that? Her smile was cruel. The bottom one. I don't know what I would have said next, but I never got the chance. Sophia's hand came out fast, connecting with my shoulder and sending me stumbling backward toward the stairs. My foot caught the edge of the top step. My arms windmilled as I tried to catch my balance, and then I was falling. The marble steps were unforgiving against my back and elbows as I tumbled down half a dozen stairs before finally coming to rest in a heap at the landing. Pain shot through my left wrist where I'd tried to break my fall, and I could taste blood where I'd bitten my tongue. But worse than the physical pain was the humiliation. The entire ballroom had gone quiet, and I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. Some guests had their phones out, probably taking pictures or videos. Others were whispering behind their hands, and I caught fragments of their words. Clumsy. Embarrassing. How awful. Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs, her hand pressed to her mouth in mock horror. Oh my God, she just fell. Someone help her. She must have tripped over her own feet. Mrs. Sterling was there in seconds, but not to help me. She knelt beside me with fury written across her face. What have you done? She hissed, keeping her voice low enough that only I could hear. Do you have any idea how this looks? The board will have my head for this. I struggled to sit up, my wrists throbbing and my uniform torn at the shoulder. Around us, the wealthy guests continued to stare and whisper, treating my pain like it was entertainment provided for their amusement. I'm sorry, I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. For falling, for bleeding on their marble stairs, for existing in their perfect world at all. Sorry doesn't fix this mess, Mrs. Sterling snapped. You're fired. Get out of my sight. The words hit me harder than the marble steps had. Fired. No job meant no money for rent, for food, for my mother's ongoing medical care. Everything I'd been working toward, everything I'd been enduring gone in an instant. I tried to stand up, but my legs were shaky and my wrist couldn't support any weight. The crowd continued to watch, their faces a mixture of curiosity and disdain, as if they were watching an animal struggle in a trap. That's when I heard footsteps on the marble, quick and purposeful, coming down the stairs toward me. I looked up, expecting to see hotel security coming to escort me out, but instead I saw Harrison Stone. His face was completely different from how I'd ever seen it before. Gone was the polite, distant expression he wore in business meetings, or the mild interest he'd shown during our brief conversations. His gray eyes were stormy, his jaw tight with an anger that seemed barely contained. He knelt beside me without hesitation, his hands gentle as he checked for injuries. Are you hurt? I'm okay, I lied, though my wrist was clearly swelling, and I was sure I'd have bruises covering my back by tomorrow. No, you're not. His voice was soft, meant only for me, but there was something fierce underneath it that made my breath catch. He helped me to my feet, supporting most of my weight when my legs proved unsteady. The ballroom was still completely silent, every person watching this unexpected development with fascination. Harrison looked up at Sophia, who was still standing at the top of the stairs with that false expression of concern. Did you push her? What? Sophia's mask slipped for just a moment, surprise flickering across her features. Of course not. She fell. Everyone saw her fall. I saw what happened, Harrison said quietly, and his voice carried in the silence of the room. I saw you push her down these stairs. That's ridiculous, Sophia protested, but her voice had gotten higher, more defensive. Why would I do such a thing? I barely know the girl. The girl, Harrison repeated, and something dangerous crept into his tone. The girl has a name. Mrs. Sterling stepped forward, clearly trying to control the situation. Mr. Stone, I assure you, this was just an accident. We'll handle our staff members' discipline appropriately. No. The word came out with such finality that Mrs. Sterling stopped mid-sentence. You won't. Harrison straightened to his full height, one arm still supporting me, and looked around the ballroom at all the faces staring back at us. I could feel tension radiating from him, could sense that he was about to do something that would change everything. There seems to be some confusion here, he said, his voice carrying easily across the silent room about who Evelyn is and why what just happened is completely unacceptable. My heart started racing. He was going to reveal our marriage, our secret arrangement in front of everyone. All our careful planning, all our agreements about keeping things private were about to be shattered. Harrison, I whispered, trying to stop him. But he looked down at me with something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Something protective and possessive and real. She's my wife. The three words dropped into the silence like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock and disbelief throughout the room. I heard someone gasp, heard someone else whisper, "Impossible." But I couldn't look away from Harrison's face. The mask he'd been wearing for months, the polite indifference, the business-like distance had completely fallen away. What was left was raw and honest and directed entirely at me. Your wife, Sophia's voice cracked on the words. That's impossible. You're not married. Everyone knows you're single. Harrison finally looked away from me to address the room. I've been married to Evelyn for 6 months. We kept it private for personal reasons, but I won't stand here and watch her be abused by people who think her position makes her less than human. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see people pulling out their phones, no doubt texting and calling everyone they knew to share this bombshell news. The most eligible bachelor in the city, married to a hotel maid. It would be front-page news by morning. Mrs. Sterling's face had gone completely white. Mr. Stone. I had no idea. Of course you didn't, Harrison cut her off, because you never bothered to see her as anything more than a uniform. None of you did. He turned his attention back to Sophia, who was now looking like she wanted to disappear through the floor. You pushed my wife down a flight of marble stairs because you thought she was beneath you, because you thought no one would care what happened to someone in a service position. I didn't know, Sophia stammered. I mean, she's just what? Harrison's voice was deadly quiet. Just a maid, just someone whose feelings don't matter, just someone whose safety is less important than your entertainment. Sophia opened her mouth, then closed it again, apparently realizing that anything she said now would only make things worse. Harrison looked around the room one more time. Let me be very clear about something. Evelyn is my wife, which makes her one of the most powerful women in this room. But even if she weren't, even if she were exactly what you thought she was, a hotel employee trying to do her job, what happened here tonight would still be unacceptable. He helped me toward the exit, but paused at the edge of the crowd. The way you treat people who serve you says everything about who you are as human beings, and frankly, most of you should be ashamed of yourselves. The car ride to the hospital was quiet. Harrison had insisted on taking me to get my wrist x-rayed, despite my protest that it was probably just sprained. He sat beside me in the emergency room, still in his expensive suit, looking completely out of place among the plastic chairs and fluorescent lighting. You didn't have to do that, I said finally, breaking the silence between us. Yes, I did. Our agreement. Forget the agreement. He turned to look at me, and I saw that same fierce protectiveness in his eyes. I should have done it months ago. Harrison, I've been watching you for months, Evelyn. Watching you work. Watching you take care of everyone around you. Watching you be invisible to people who should have seen how extraordinary you are. My breath caught in my throat. That's not what this is supposed to be. Maybe not, he said quietly. But it's what it became, at least for me. The x-rays showed that my wrist was badly sprained, but not broken. Harrison insisted on staying with me through the whole process, holding my good hand while they wrapped the injury and giving the doctor his personal phone number in case there were any complications. When we finally left the hospital, dawn was starting to break over the city. Harrison helped me into his car, then sat in the driver's seat for a long moment without starting the engine. What happens now? I asked. Now everyone knows we're married. That wasn't part of the plan. No, he agreed. It wasn't, but I'm not sorry it happened. I looked at him in surprise. You're not, Evelyn. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the day we signed those papers. I told myself it was just business, just a temporary arrangement. But somewhere along the way it became something else entirely. What kind of something else? He turned to face me fully. The kind where I can't stand to watch someone hurt you. The kind where I want to take care of you, protect you, make sure you never have to be invisible again. My heart was beating so fast I was sure he could hear it. Harrison, we barely know each other. Then let's change that, he said simply. Let's make this real. 3 months later, I was standing in the same grand ballroom where everything had changed. But this time, I wasn't wearing a uniform. I was wearing a midnight blue dress that Harrison had picked out for me. And instead of serving guests, I was greeting them as his wife. The hotel's new management had made significant changes in how staff were treated. Mrs. Sterling had been quietly let go after the board reviewed security footage from the night of the gala. New policies were in place to protect employees from harassment, and comprehensive training on respect and dignity had become mandatory for all guests who wanted to host events at the Sterling. Sophia Blackwell had faced both social and legal consequences for her actions. The assault charges had been quietly settled out of court, but her reputation in the society circles was ruined. More importantly to me, she'd been banned from the Sterling and several other high-end establishments in the city, but the biggest change was in me. I was no longer invisible. Harrison had made sure of that, not just by revealing our marriage, but by supporting me as I found my own voice and my own power. Together, we'd started a foundation focused on workers' rights and dignity in service industries. My mother's surgery had been successful, and she was recovering well in a beautiful facility that Harrison had arranged. She'd been skeptical about my whirlwind marriage at first, but Harrison had won her over by listening to her stories and treating her with the same respect he showed everyone else. Do you ever regret it? I asked Harrison as we danced together at our second wedding reception. This one a celebration rather than a business arrangement. Regret what? Giving up your bachelor status for a maid. He pulled me closer, smiling in a way that made my heart skip. Evelyn, you were never just a maid. You were always extraordinary. It just took me a while to be brave enough to see it. As we danced, surrounded by people who now saw me as someone worth seeing, I thought about how much can change in a single moment. How 3 words, she's my wife, had transformed not just how others saw me, but how I saw myself. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room really is the one everyone overlooks. Sometimes it just takes someone else recognizing your worth to help you recognize it too. And sometimes what starts as a business arrangement can become the most real thing in your life. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer just a maid in the background. I was Evelyn Stone, and I mattered. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone overlooks. Evelyn's story proves that respect isn't about money or status. It's about human dignity. What did you think of Harrison's dramatic revelation? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love this story of hidden identities and sweet justice, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming.